Billionaire finds his maid sleeping on a bench with his baby. What happens next is shocking. The city never truly slept. Even at 3 a.m., the streets of Manhattan hummed faintly with life, the distant hum of taxis, the rhythm of footsteps, the low murmur of neon lights flickering above empty sidewalks. But in the quiet park near Central Avenue, under the soft glow of a single lamppost, a scene unfolded that would change one man's heart forever. Alexander Grant, one of New York's youngest billionaires, walked briskly through the park, his tailored coat barely keeping him warm against the October wind. He wasn't supposed to be here, not tonight, not at this hour. He had left his mansion after a sleepless argument with his board of directors and an even colder silence from his empty home. His wife had passed years ago, leaving behind a baby boy, his world, his reason to keep living. But lately, even his wealth couldn't fill the emptiness that had settled deep in his soul. He had built skyscrapers and tech empires, yet couldn't build peace within his own home. As he turned a corner near the fountain, he froze. There, on a wooden bench, wrapped in a thin blanket, slept a woman, clutching his son. At first, his heart stopped. He thought he was hallucinating. He blinked, stepped closer, and the sight before him cut through his chest like a blade. It was Clara, his maid, the quiet, gentle woman who had worked in his mansion for just 6 months. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, always polite, never speaking unless spoken to. She cared for his baby, little Ethan, with a tenderness that no one else had ever shown since his wife's passing. But now, there she was, asleep on a cold park bench, holding Ethan close to her chest, shielding him from the freezing air. His voice trembled with fury and confusion. "Clara? What in God's name are you doing here?" Clara jolted awake, her eyes wide and terrified. She looked around, disoriented, then immediately checked the baby, his soft curls, his tiny hand resting on her shoulder. She sighed with relief before turning to face him. "Mr. Grant," she stammered. "Please. I can explain." Alexander's heart pounded. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. He quickly took off his coat and wrapped it around them both. "Explain," he snapped, though his voice cracked. "You took my son out of the house, at night. Clara, do you have any idea what could have?" Her tears stopped him. They weren't tears of guilt, they were tears of fear, of exhaustion, of someone who had reached her breaking point. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, voice trembling. "I had nowhere else to go." They sat there, in the cold park, the baby now sleeping peacefully again. Alexander looked at her, truly looked, and realized how pale and frail she seemed. Her eyes were sunken, her clothes worn thin. He had never noticed. In his world of meetings and investments, he had never really seen her. "Start from the beginning," he said softly. "Tell me why." Clara took a shaky breath. "I was evicted today. The landlord threw me out. I've been saving, but my brother's medical bills, they took everything. I didn't want to bother anyone, especially not you. I planned to stay at the shelter, but they were full tonight. I didn't want to leave Ethan alone in the mansion, not with the strangers who come and go. So I brought him with me. I thought, maybe the park would be safe for a few hours." Her voice broke on the last word. Alexander felt something twist inside him, guilt, disbelief, sorrow. He had hired her through an agency, paid her fairly, but never once asked about her life. To him, she was an employee. To Ethan, she was family. He sat in silence, the weight of her words sinking deep. The night grew colder, and he finally said, in a voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you call me, Clara? You have my number." Her eyes filled again. "Because people like me don't call people like you." That sentence shattered him. Without another word, Alexander stood. "Come on. You're both freezing. We're going home." Clara hesitated. "Mr. Grant, please. I don't want pity. I just—" "This isn't pity," he said firmly. It's responsibility. He lifted Ethan from her arms, holding his son close as she followed silently behind him. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, save for the soft hum of the car heater and Ethan's breathing. When they arrived, Alexander told her to wait in the living room. Moments later, he returned with a warm blanket and a cup of tea. "Clara," he said gently, "from now on, you and your brother will stay here. Your family. No arguments." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can," he said, voice firm but kind. "You've cared for my son like he was your own. It's time someone cared for you." Her lip trembled. For the first time in years, someone had seen her, not as a maid, not as an employee, but as a person. Days turned into weeks. Clara and her brother, Daniel, moved into the guest house. Ethan adored her more than ever, and Alexander found himself drawn to her quiet strength. She didn't seek attention, didn't ask for anything. She simply gave, love, time, care, without expecting anything in return. One night, Alexander walked past the nursery and stopped at the door. Clara was singing softly, Ethan's tiny fingers curled around hers. The song was in Spanish, gentle and soothing. When she finished, she noticed him watching. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "No," he said quickly. "That was beautiful." He hesitated before asking, "Clara, can I ask something personal? Why didn't you go to college? You're intelligent, I can tell." She smiled faintly. "I was supposed to. I wanted to be a nurse. But when my mother died, I had to take care of my brother. Dreams became luxury." Alexander nodded slowly. "Maybe some dreams can come back." She looked away, tears glistening. "Dreams don't feed people, Mr. Grant." He looked at her with quiet determination. "Then maybe it's time someone else fed you." One snowy evening, a few months later, tragedy struck. Daniel collapsed at his new job. The doctor said his condition, a rare heart defect, required immediate surgery. The cost was astronomical. Clara broke down in the hospital corridor. "I can't lose him," she sobbed. "He's all I have." Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not losing anyone." Without hesitation, he covered every expense: surgery, care, rehabilitation. When Clara protested, he stopped her with a single sentence that silenced every doubt. "You saved my son's life that night in the park," he said softly. "Now let me save your brother's." Months passed, and Daniel recovered fully. During that time, something unspoken grew between Clara and Alexander. They never labeled it. It was too delicate, too sacred, but every glance, every conversation carried warmth and quiet understanding. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Alexander found Clara standing in the garden, watching the sunset. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked. "All the time," she admitted. "It feels like a different world." "It was the night that changed everything," he said. "For both of us." She looked at him, eyes soft. "I used to think people like you lived in another universe, one I could never belong to." He smiled gently. "Maybe I was the one living in a world too small. Money builds walls. You tore them down." The next morning, Alexander gathered everyone, the staff, Clara, Daniel, and little Ethan, in the living room. "I have an announcement," he said. "Clara, you've been more than an employee. You've been family. From today, I'm starting a foundation, the Clara Hope Initiative, to help single mothers and families struggling with homelessness. And I want you to lead it." Clara was speechless. I can't. I don't know how." He smiled. "You already do. You know what it means to fight, to care, to hope." Tears filled her eyes. She had spent her whole life helping others quietly. And now, someone was helping her build a voice. From that day, Clara became the heart of the foundation, turning her pain into purpose. She worked tirelessly to provide shelter, education, and care for women and children in need. Alexander funded it, but it was her spirit that breathed life into it. Years later, the park bench where it all began was replaced with a small marble plaque that read, "For every soul who has nowhere to rest, may you find kindness where you least expect it." In memory of Clara Hope and Ethan Grant. Clara and Alexander eventually married, not out of wealth or convenience, but out of a deep, undeniable bond forged through compassion and shared humanity. Together, they raised Ethan, who grew up surrounded not by riches, but by values, kindness, gratitude, and love. And the once cold billionaire, the man who measured worth in numbers, found his true wealth in the heart of a woman who had once slept on a park bench with his baby. In life, it's easy to overlook those who serve us quietly, the cleaners, the drivers, the maids, the invisible hands that make our worlds run smoothly. But sometimes, the people we overlook carry the purest hearts, the deepest sacrifices, and the kindest souls. Alexander's story became more than a tale of wealth, it became a testament to humanity. Because compassion doesn't come from riches. It comes from recognizing the worth in others, even when the world doesn't. And sometimes, the person you least expect to change your life, is the one who already has. Moral: kindness has no status. Compassion has no price. True wealth is not counted in dollars, but in the lives we touch.